Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra book, and we are now dealing with this section that was titled The Stillest Hour. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. What happened to me, my friends? You see me distracted, driven away, unwillingly obedient, prepared to go, alas, to go away from you. Indeed, Zarathustra must return once more to his solitude, but this time the bear goes back to his cave without joy. What happened to me? Who ordered this? Alas, my angry mistress wants it. She spoke to me. Have I ever yet mentioned her name to you? Yesterday, toward evening, there spoke to me my stillest hour. That is the name of my awesome mistress. And thus it happened, for I must tell you everything, lest your hearts harden against me, for departing suddenly. Do you know the fright of him who falls asleep? He is frightened down to his very toes, because the ground gives under him and the dream begins. This I say to you as a parable. So, the fright of him who falls asleep, the toes, and the relation to the ground giving under him, and the dream begins. So, toes, when you're not steady-footed and leveled, and you're dizzy, and you're feeling discombobulated, you definitely feel it first through the feet. When you're not sure-footed, that becomes a big problem. Very big problem. This I say to you as a parable. Yesterday, in the stillest hour, the ground gave under me. The dream began. The hand moved. The clock of my life drew a breath. The clock of my life drew a breath. That's a very cool line. Never had I heard such stillness around me. My heart took fright. Then it spoke to me without voice. You know it, Zarathustra. And I cried with fright at this whispering. And the blood left my face, but I remained silent. Then it spoke to me again without voice. You know it, Zarathustra, but you do not say it. And at last I answered defiantly, yes, I know it, but I do not want to say it. When it spoke to me again without voice, you do not want to, Zarathustra? Is this really true? Do not hide in your defiance. And I cried and trembled like a child and spoke. Alas, I would like to, but how can I? Let me off from this. It is beyond my strength. Then it spoke to me again without voice. What do you matter, Zarathustra? Speak your word and break. I answered, alas, it is my word. Who am I? I await the worthier one. I am not worthy even of being broken by it. Then it spoke to me again without voice. What do you matter? So we see here the repetition. That sounds like an evil voice. Really, that sounds like you don't matter, like some very negative way. You are not yet humble enough for me. Humility has the toughest hide. I think that's true. When you're really humble, you can take much. And I answered, what has the hide of my humility not borne? I dwell at the foot of my height. How high are my peaks, no one has told me yet, but my valleys I know well. So, peaks versus valleys. When you think about the range, because when you're going up to a peak, it's a very difficult path to traverse. You're exhausted, you want to give up, you can't see the finish line, but a valley is more smooth, and when you walk, it's more pleasant because the incline is not as steep. It's not as taxing on the body. In fact, walking through the valley can rejuvenate you more than going to the highest peaks, which is why more people travel through valleys than Mount Everest. So a peak, when it comes to knowledge, something that's very difficult to traverse versus general knowledge. Then it spoke to me again without a voice, O Zarathustra, he who has to move mountains also moves valleys and hollows. I answered, as yet my words have not moved mountains, and what I said did not reach men. Indeed, I have gone to men, but as yet I have not arrived. Indeed, I have gone to men, but as yet I have not arrived. Oh, what you getting at? Then it spoke to me again without voice. What do you know of that? The dew falls on the grass when the night is most silent. And I answered, they mocked me when I found and went my own way, and in truth my feet were trembling then. So they mocked me when I found and went my own way, and in truth my feet were trembling then. So it's nervous to go on traverse a path that's never been trod, but you gotta keep going. And thus they spoke to me, you have forgotten the way. Now you have also forgotten how to walk. Then it spoke to me again without voice. What matters their mockery? You are one who has forgotten how to obey. Now you shall command. Do you not know who is most needed by all? He that commands great things. To do great things is difficult, but to command great things is more difficult. To do versus command. Because for you to do it, that comes from your own will, but when you command, you have to persuade others. Their wills have to decide. You cannot decide for them. This is what is most unforgivable in you. You have the power, and you do not want to rule. And I answered, I lack the lion's voice for commanding. So that's another angle of rulership. If a chihuahua barks at you, it doesn't matter. A cane corso barks at you, it's got your attention. So whose roar, whose voice commands your attention? It's something to really think about. Who can hold it? Then it spoke to me again as a whisper. It is the stillest words that bring on the storm. Thoughts that come on dove's feet guide the world. Thoughts that come on dove's feet guide the world. Send a raven. O Zarathustra, you shall go as a shadow of that which must come. You will command, and commanding lead the way. And I answered, I am ashamed. Then it spoke to me again without voice. You must yet become as a child, and without shame. Now, I've never been fond of telling people to become as a child, because we tell children to grow up, man up, be mature. A child has wonder around the natural world, but they have to be guarded and protected. You're an adult, you don't need to be like a child. You need to be like an adult. The adult protects the child. When you're a child, others have to protect you 24/7, and predators seek you because you're an easy target. So, children should have shame, to a certain degree. Like, there's people who let their kids just pee, right out in public, and you should tell them, no, don't do that. That's disgusting. You need to go to the potty. You have to teach kids shame, and shame has a very valuable lesson. The pride of youth is still upon you. You have become young late, but whoever would become as a child must overcome his youth too. And I reflected for a long time and trembled, but at last I said, what I had said at first. I do not want to. Then laughter surrounded me. Alas, how this laughter tore my entrails and slit open my heart, and it spoke to me for the last time. O Zarathustra, your fruit is ripe, but you are not ripe for your fruit. Ooh! Your fruit is ripe, but you are not ripe for your fruit. This is the type of writing style that gets you thinking. It's very creative. Thus you must return to your solitude again, for you must yet become mellow. So this is another aspect that I like, which is why I'm more fond of being a hermit now, because solitude sets you back. Now, isolation and being an outcast is different than monk mode, solitude, and seeking peace over seeking to be a social butterfly, crowd pleaser, or the jester. And again it laughed and fled, then it became still around me as with a double stillness. But I lay on the ground, and sweat poured from my limbs. Now you have heard all, and why I must return to my solitude. Nothing have I kept from you, my friends, but this too you have heard from me, who is still the most taciturn of all men, and wants to be. Alas, my friends, I still could tell you something. I still could give you something. Why do I not give it? Am I stingy? But when Zarathustra had spoken these words, he was overcome by the force of his pain, and the nearness of his parting from his friends, and he wept loudly. And no one knew how to comfort him. At night, however, he went away alone and left his friends. So here, he's on back into solitude. Remember, he was, in the beginning, came down. Now he's going back. Okay? And this voice is peculiar, right? The stillest hour is like, when you think about that, if you've ever had to make a tough choice, everything just feels still. You have to be still. You have to think, what's the pathway here? Which way are we going? You know? And the indecisiveness can make you still, but also slowing down and really weighing the pros and cons, what's happening here. And it's interesting that he mentions, you know, the fright of him who falls asleep. It's almost like you don't want to confront the unconscious mind of yourself. Dreams can be very unpleasant. People who have dreams that are not very fun often. It's interesting, the dream world in particular. You can't command your dreams. It's a mystery. And some dreams are just ongoing taxes on your mental fortitude. And if you don't have good dreams, you can't sleep well. So if you're going to bed and then you have multiple dreams, like let's say you had 2 dreams that night that woke you up. Plus, when you woke up to use the restroom, you're having interrupted sleep cycles, and then the next day you're not going to feel as rejuvenated and strong to face the day. And your immune system gets depleted, you're in a more grumpier mood, you have less energy, and the next day you're wondering, hey, am I going to be able to fall asleep? Because you don't get to be the stable-minded one in your dream. You know, sometimes in a dream you feel like you have operational control, but other times you're at the whims of what's happening, especially with nightmares. And so I find that a very interesting mention in here. And I do enjoy the line, the clock of my life drew a breath. I thought of a child being born. Why is that child has entered into this realm, into this dimension, left their mother's womb, and they are breathing. They do their first cry or just the first like gasp, and that umbilical cord is severed. You know, it's cut off. Now the baby, the clock's ticking, and you only have a certain time on this earth. And now the clock is ticking to your death until Allah commands you back. So I do enjoy that. And the clock ticks with your first breath, and the clock stops with your last breath. It's fascinating. And so, without a voice. So the strange part is it spoke to him without a voice. And that's a mystery going on here because it's talking, communicating to him. Is it his inner monologue? Is it his own thoughts? How does he feel like this? It's strange. And he says he cried with the fright at that whispering. And he heard the stillness. Hearing stillness instead of feeling stillness. Speaking without a voice. He's playing with words here, right? Humility has the toughest hide. So, think about how people, when they have to suck it up, buttercup, and deal with somebody being a jackass to them. And they don't have huge ego that gets frazzled at everything. Think about a person who... Okay, let me give you an example. So some women, they got giant boobs, giant fake tits, and Botox, balloon lips, and those spider umbrella eyelashes and whatnot, and they just feel like they're the bee's knees. But then a guy will call them mid, and suddenly they are agitated, they're angry, they lash out, they cry, they have, oh, suddenly you penetrated their self-esteem. But a woman who is natural and I'd say focused on things other than her reflection in the mirror, not saying she neglects herself. What I'm saying is that her beauty isn't the only thing she orbits around in life. She's humble. And you were to call her ugly, she might be like, hey, I'm not really into that, you know? And so it would be quite sad to see someone who doesn't really have that tough hide of humility, you know? I really do think that it can serve a lot of people good to be more humble. But it's hard because confidence and arrogance do a dance with each other. It's not as easy as it seems. And some people perceive a high self-esteem as only narcissism. They see it as only vanity. I guess it's the way in which you carry yourself and conduct your behavior. I like to think of the Islamic scholars who are very humble, and then you'll see very arrogant, secular, liberal, atheist professors who, you know, they want you to refer to all the titles and acclimates that they have, the accolades and such, and they feel like they're above you and you're beneath them, the laptop class in the ivory tower. Forgetting that there's lots of things they don't know. And so, humility plays a long role, but that doesn't mean you do self-deprecation. Doesn't mean you have to hate yourself. Doesn't mean you mutilate yourself or do something bizarre in order to humble yourself. Because there's decent ways to get about that and bad ways to get about it. Right? And he asks himself, you know, how high are my peaks? But my valleys I know well. Like, that's a thing for all of us to consider. And then the line, I have gone to men, but as yet I have not reached them, really. And then he mentions how mockery made him feel a little bit trembly when he went his own way, and that just hints at some people won't understand you, and you may at times not have any support for your decision, but you must carry on and make a choice either way. And so when he left his friends and he wept loudly and he went away alone and he went back to solitude so he could become mellow, well, you see a bit of self-awareness there, you know. And then he answered, I lack the lion's voice for commanding. So the certain tones of people are more suited to ruling, but for certain types of people you need a certain type of voice. And that's another nuance of life, isn't it? When you think about how you have to use different tones with different people. You often, Gladiator keeps playing with his toy and dropping it. You have to watch your tone with certain people, and I've learned this. I hate the really high pitched, like, yes, oh my goodness, yes, I totally know. Okay, yes, Courtney, like, I totally get it. Like, there's some women who will do a totally fake tone. But rather, what I mean by tone is that the pitch and, like, the volume and how you say the words. You're not so blunt in the face. Some people you have to be that way. Some people you have to cut to the chase. Others you have to approach it in a very delicate manner. You know, like if a child is coloring on the walls, like, hey, stop that right now. We don't need to be doing that. But if the child is running out in front of a truck, you're like, hey. You have to have a lion's voice to command that child to stop. You can't see your kid running in front of a car and be like, honey, please stop. There's a dangerous car coming. No, you'd be like, there's a car now, come back. Like, you have to command, right? But the delicate balance is, though, is people who are overreactionary. People who, like a boss who comes in raging and just starts grilling employees over minor things and taking his stress out on the office, right? But for soldiers, that's another thing. What kind of voice is going to get them to obey? What kind of personality trait? So rhetoric plays a role in getting others to do things for you. And when people are in doubt and in despair, what kind of speech is necessary to prod them to keep going and to do the mission? Another thing to think about, what crowd is being addressed and what is their condition, right? Something else to think about. The other line that was unique was, "O Zarathustra, your fruit is ripe, but you are not ripe for your own fruit." Like, what? That's interesting. That sounds like, you can't handle the taste of your own medicine. That's what it sounds like to me. Let me know what you think. It's quite unique. Nietzsche never fails to deliver us some bars. Okay. And okay, here we go. Mashallah. Perfect. We'll go to the third part next time. Okay. And remember, this was originally written in German, and I'm pretty sure if people who could probably read German would get even more depth from it. But the fact that we can get joy from it, even though it's spoken in English, is testimony to his skill as a writer, right? And that's where we must give him credit where credit is due. Let me know what you think, and please like, comment, and share. And if you'd like to support my work, you can do so by going to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there. I'm gonna go see what the children are doing. They were watching some animal videos on the computer, so they might be arguing over, like, who gets to press the touchscreen or whatnot. Wicked Wombat is an animal channel that has, like, so many funny things about animals. And the older clips don't have music, so that helps. I'm gonna go check on them and see how they're doing. But the toddler has been having, little Tiger Paw's been having more tantrums lately, not wanting to share, stuff like that. But we'll see how it is. Mom life is difficult. Bye bye.